Marston.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. When this bill was introduced at second reading, the government said this is a four nations bill. And on the face of it, it is. But the legal reality is that it isn't, because the provisions which are applicable to Northern Ireland are inevitably destined to be struck down by the High Court because of Northern Ireland's subjugation under the Protocol or Windsor Framework to EU law. And the specific EU law that Northern Ireland is subject relevant to this bill is the Tobacco Directive. And the Tobacco Directive says that you cannot limit the placing on the market of tobacco products. And that caused two governments who are within the EU, both the Danish government and the Irish Republic government, to withdraw proposals that they had, acknowledging that when they wanted to do the same as this House is doing, they couldn't do it because it would breach the Tobacco Directive. Now that to me is an appalling vista, that this sovereign parliament, so-called, of the United Kingdom can produce a bill which on the face of it applies to all parts of the United Kingdom, but there is a parliament we don't elect, which has decreed a superior piece of legislation insofar as Northern Ireland is concerned, because we're subject, alas, to their rules, which means that this proposal, as far as my constituency is concerned, will be stillborn. And that is a quite appalling situation. And the legal recommendations in this have been quite clear. That's why I drafted new clause 3, which would provide a route to ensure that this bill did apply in Northern Ireland. And the way it would do that is by exempting the Tobacco Directive as passing through the conduit that delivers EU law to Northern Ireland, namely Section 7A of the European Union Withdrawal Act of 2018. The way Northern Ireland is governed under these pernicious EU laws is that within the Protocol or the Windsor Framework, in Annex 2, there are 289 laws set out which will continue to apply to Northern Ireland. One of them is the Tobacco Directive. And the Tobacco Directive, through Section 7A, with the other 288 EU laws, is applied as superior law in Northern Ireland. Law that this sovereign parliament cannot disapply. And that is why in new clause 3, I was providing the opportunity to the government to take the opportunity of amending Section 7A so as to exempt the Tobacco Directive's application in Northern Ireland. And I do say to the government, they have not accepted this amendment, though there's time in the other place to do so. There's no point in simply repeating an assurance as at second reading, oh, we're confident that it will apply. The same lawyers in government advised the last government that the Rwanda bill would apply in Northern Ireland, that the Legacy bill would apply in Northern Ireland, but when it hit the buffers in the High Court, it was because Northern Ireland on those two issues were subject to the superiority of EU law with which they conflicted. It is an even clearer situation when you have expressly the Tobacco Directive set out in the annex to the protocol that it is the superior applicable law, and when it says you cannot ban the sale of products, it is even clearer that this directive, that this legislation will be unable to apply in Northern Ireland. And my challenge to the government tonight is this: if that turns out to be correct, and no doubt there will be the vested interest of the tobacco industry to bring the challenge in the High Court, if it turns out that these provisions are struck down in Northern Ireland, then will the government at least commit tonight that they will override that in future legislation?